In this video, I'll explain you what a session is and then how you can use session in your website to transfer the data uh, between pages anywhere in your project. So session is nothing but you can you can store the session value, you can store some data, you can store some objects in your session. That is, until unless your browser is on or your browser is open, that data will be stored in a container and you can get it out from that container and you can use it wherever you want. And then there are multiple ways you can use sessions. So you can use the normal browser sessions using client side, you can use it in the server side, you can use http sessions, you can use cookies. There are various ways you can store the data. There are local storage where you can store the data and you can get it. So we'll be seeing http sessions in this interface. So http session interface will be using to store and session. Okay, so for example, I'll go ahead and I'll pick any of this file. So I'll say add students. So once the data is added successfully, so what happens in this, it is redirecting to display student. Yes, so before redirecting, or here once it is done, so before redirecting I'll say http session and I'll call this session is equals to request dot get session. So I'll say get session. So this will get my http session. Now I have to include this, so I have to import this class. So import from java dot servlets.htp. Then I'll say, so I have to then set the session, that is I have to set that in this session you have to set an attribute. So I'll say session dot set attribute and I'll say status as, I'll say data added. Okay, so you see here I have stored this data added session here, and in my add student, so what I'll do here, somewhere in the part here I'll write a p tag. So I'll say in this container, within this container, so I'll create a JavaScript and I'll say string of status is equals to, then I'll say first I have to create http session. So I'll say http session s is equals to request dot get session. Then in the next line I'll say string status is equals to s dot get attribute. What is the attribute name I want? Status, because you see I have added here, right, status, and it is not compulsory that I have to add it here. Anywhere you want to add a session you can just add it, and then wherever you want in your container you can receive. So here I have to typecast it to string because what I'm getting is an object, so I have to typecast this to string. And then I'll say if my status is not equal to null, then I'll open the bracket and here in scriptlet I'll close, and between this I'll add a p tag and here I'll say display whatever is the status. So we use http sessions in order to store whether the user is logged in or some data change or something like that. So for those cases we can use this. So now if I run this add student.jsp, run as run on server, so initially you won't see anything, but once I successfully add in data, so I'll say 14 and student name I'll say Isa, then I'll say Isa at the gmail.com, then phone number, and I'll say branch, and I'll say semester, I'll pick any grade, I'll say 8.70, and then once I submit, once it comes back, so going to add student, you see this data added, right? So wherever you want you can store some session data and you can print it. So example, if I want a data from index, it should go from index to add, or from add servlet I want it from here. So wherever if you have to transfer the data you can transfer it here. So there are multiple ways, as I said, you can you can store the data and retrieve it right in the container. So if you right click and press on inspect, and then you have to go ahead and you have to click on applications. So in applications there are various places you can see here. So here in local storage, if you are storing locally some data, you will get it here. In session storage, if you are storing some session data, you will get it here. If you are using cookies and you are storing some data in cookies, you will get here. So we are not using any client side things, but it is here, that's why it is here empty. But if you are creating a web application in client side, if you are using local storage, if you are using session storage, or you are using cookies, it will be displayed here. Here you will have key value pair for each of this. Now the difference is, in local storage, once you refresh the browser or once you close the browser, it goes away. Okay, in session you can give a time limit, so it should be there for 1 minute, 1 day, or 2 days. In cookies also you can store this, and you can give an expiry date, and in that particular expiry it will go and it will delete. So this is the few debugging tools we'll be using often in the coming applications. What we'll be building, we'll be using all this. But I want you to get thorough with what are the storage, what is a local storage, what is a session storage, and what is cookies and stuff. So this is all about your sessions, where you can get the data and you can pull it out anywhere, wherever you want. You can store it and pull it out. So if same thing I want, same thing I can display it in my display page also. I can display it in my display page also. Same thing, I can go and I can display it. See, I'm not sending from my display controller. See here, from my display student controller, have I anywhere written code to send status? No, right? But still this status will work. Why? Because I'm getting this from my session storage. So it is stored in a container in this session, and then I can get it anywhere in the program. So this is all about your sessions.